Yeah, that's right, everybody. I cleaned up my beard. I mean, it's there, but, it's tidy now. I call this version of me personal hygiene, Dan, and he comes but once a month. I don't know why people put up with me in my personal life. You guys don't really you have a choice, and I thank you for choosing me. Welcome to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm Dan Vespris. Yes, I'm all decked out in West LA garb. The official select season of baseball is here. I'm very proud of my oldest son. Asher made the 8 and under all-star team, and a good friend of mine was kind enough to invite me to be one of the assistant coaches. So my summer is going to be jammed with lava hot baseball tournaments in the 818, and I couldn't be more excited about it. It's going to be the best. I hate heat, actually, more than anything on earth. I hate the heat, and I love this so much. Today on the program, to celebrate, actually, it has nothing to do with it. We're going to be looking back at our riskiest players in fantasy show that we put out on, wait a minute, I can do this. What day was that? That was on, wow, that was mid-September. I thought it was later than that. I guess we probably should have done a redo on it, but whatever. This is the one from mid-September that is relatively self-explanatory. These 6 players carried huge risk, and we'll go past tense. Was drafting them worth it in different formats? Let's roll. And I went countdown mode on this one. So it's we went from lowest pre-rank to highest. And these pre-ranks did change a little bit as because this was mid-September. These guys moved around. Jimmy Butler, who had a pre-rank of 46 at the time of doing this show, was our first risky player. And yeah, I was into it. Oops. I guess, here's the thing. I didn't know he was going to throw a temper tantrum. There's always the injury stuff that hangs over Jimmy Butler. And we've kind of learned to deal with that. And my thought process was, okay, well, if he misses 15 to 20 games on the head-to-head side, you're getting him at a basement level price in the late 40s, late 4th round on Jimmy Butler, which I think is actually pretty close to where he ended up on the final draft board. I'll check that out while we're talking about it. And if he had missed only 15 to 20 games, this would have worked out fine. But he pouted his way. He James Hardened his way into a bunch of extra games off. So we only got 55 games out of Jimmy Butler this season. And, the first 30 of those in Miami I don't want to say he was half-assing it, but 25, of those was in Miami. He was kind of half-assing it a little bit. Shooting the ball well. The field goal percent was good, but the assists were down. The steals were down. You could see the effort stuff wasn't really there. And that was where this one went awry, because on a per game basis, especially once he got to Golden State, he was quite good. You can look at kind of like the last 3 months situation for Butler. He was basically a late second rounder when he got traded to Golden State. Second rounder, 47, 48% from the field, great free throws, big steals. It was all the stuff that you kind of wanted at him, and minimal 3-pointers, but that's always been the Jimmy Butler experience anyway. On the Roto side, it panned out okay. It wasn't great, and it wasn't bad. It certainly wasn't a win by any stretch when a guy misses 27 ball games, but his totals value ended up in the 50s, which, again, like, you drafted him in the 40s, his total value ends up in the 50s. It's really not that bad. Like, you can very easily swallow that down. Depending on the website you're looking at, it might have been 60. Sorry, had that off by 1. So basically, he was like a late 5th, early 6th rounder by totals. Drafted him probably in the early 5th is about where he was going when all was said and done. The final pre-ranks board had Butler at I guess it was around 40. So it was still 4th round. We got to try to keep track of where these players bounced around to. So head-to-head, no, it didn't work out at all. Roto, it was kind of fine. It wasn't good. It wasn't awful. Call it like a barely a miss on the Roto side. But ruined by pouting. Ruined by a trade request and then a standoff with Pat Riley. Even if he had just played like 5 or 6 of those games instead of being suspended, this thing would have worked out on the Roto side, but he didn't. So Bum, 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 bum. Pew. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online sports betting action. Can you even believe the game last night? Can you imagine? I have no idea what the money line odds were on the Pacers when they were down 9 with a minute to go, but I'm guessing it was a lot. And if you think something insane is going to happen in the other game, well, BetOnline is the place to go. OKC, 7.5-point favorites at home tonight in Game 2 against the Minnesota Timberwolves, total of 217.5. All that available and more over at BetOnline with baseball in full swing. They've got the NHL playoffs. They've got UFC, and everything else is rolling along in tow as well. BetOnline remains the number one source for sports wagering info with the opportunity to bet in-game live while the action is happening. That's what we're talking about with that crazy Pacers-Knicks ending yesterday. And if you don't want to wait around for the ball games to start, if you're listening to this podcast earlier in the day, or if you're just not a big sports betting friend, guess what? They've got blackjack. They've got poker. They've got a live BetOnline casino that you can just sit around in and throw 25 cents on whatever you so choose. So head there now because it's the best. BetOnline. The game starts here. Next name on the board, Lowry Markin at number 27. This one was a head-to-head nah. And at Roto, I actually gave it a very soft yes, which ultimately ended up being completely foolish. But here's the thing. A soft yes that became a soft no as draft season went on because of other guys that ended up being pre-ranked around him. This was in mid-September. Remember, this one did change as you go towards the later parts of draft season. You can see that because you can go to my buckets. The buckets board, still available. The G Sheet link is still in the description of every single show. I had Lowry Markin down in bucket 11, which was behind a number of guys that were typically still on the board at this particular draft slot. I can't remember the exact number, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, 16, 21, 27, 31. He was basically, for me, he was like a late third instead of a mid third, which obviously still would have been wrong. But the nice part is this is an early, 27 is an early third round valuation. And that just wasn't going to happen. So that's why I think I may have had him in one league where he fell far and I took him like early fourth. And then obviously I still regretted that. But for the most part, early third round, we were looking at Dame. We were looking at Booker. We were looking at LeBron. We were looking at Maxey, Jalen Williams, Jalen Johnson, who unfortunately got hurt and didn't pan out. Evan Mobley was in there. Cade Cunningham was in there. So there were all these other things that we could do instead of Lowry Markkanen. And luckily, then we didn't end up with him in many spots because he was just awful. We don't even need to know the numbers to know how terrible he was. He didn't play well. You could say he was hurt, but he was, hurt. And, yeah, let's just pretend that one never happened. But at least we got it right on the head-to-head side. And Roto, we kind of got lucky by having other targets that we liked more nearby. Kyrie Irving at number 14. And remember, this is a list of the riskiest players in fantasy. This is not like, these were not targets necessarily. These are the guys that went into the draft where we were like, if you're getting down on this, you are probably, floating along solo on that one. So this is one that actually did change quite a bit over the month between when we did this show during the preseason, when the actual late boards went off, because Kyrie Irving was pre-ranked 14 here. We had him in bucket 9, which was like end of the second round, early third round. So at 14, there was basically no chance that we were going to end up with him. And you can see on your screen here, head-to-head, he was a no at 14. Roto, he was an almost at 14. And then he slid. And he slid. And he slid some more until finally he settled at number 20, which again, it doesn't sound like a lot, but moving 6 slots when you're an early rounder is a pretty big deal. At 20, I was okay with him in Roto. I still didn't want him in head-to-head because there was just too much risk. But, and the thing is, he was going to be awesome this year until he blew out his ACL. He finished at 50 ball games. He probably would have gotten into the mid-60s had he not blown out his knee. He was basically a first rounder on a per game basis, which is always kind of what he does. And that was while shooting a lower field goal percent this year. But again, catastrophic injury. You can't really budget that in, but you could budget the risk. It was a bigger issue than we thought it was going to be, but missed games was the big issue here. So for Kyrie at 14, we basically said no. And I think that ends up being accurate with or without the blown ACL because his per game numbers were only, 1, 2, 3 slots ahead of where he was going here. On the Roto side, again, without the knee thing, he probably would have been fine at 14. He would have been decent actually at 20, but the knee thing happened, and that's what happens when you take these big risks. You just sort of never know what's going to go down. Number 13 per game. And what was the totals number on Kyrie? I don't know that it's super important to look it up when you miss 32 games. It's kind of like, well, it's going to be lower. But if you're curious on how much lower, it was number 65. So obviously that wouldn't have worked out looking at the total side. And now you can kind of get an idea of how much. So, yeah, a little bit risky there. Next name on the list was Kawhi Leonard at number 30. I think I was ranking them by how much risk they were. It wasn't by pre-rank from lowest pre-rank to highest. This was by how risky they were. And at this point, Kawhi Leonard had a pre-rank of 30, but at this point, we were being told that he was going to be healthy to start the year. So we pretty much have to wipe this one off the board and just talk about Kawhi from what actually went down, which is that he ended with a pre-rank of 48. He fell a round and a half when news came out that he was not going to be ready to start the season. At 48, I did not want him in head-to-head, but I did want him in Roto. So that's basically what we're going to be grading ourselves on here. How did it turn out for Kawhi? Well, a little bit of a mixed bag. It took him, to no one's surprise, longer to get back than the Clippers were saying it was going to. Once he came back, there was a pretty long, slow ramp-up process. But damn, by the end of the year, Kawhi was soaring. So you kind of have to look at this from two perspectives. If you took him in Roto, you were doing so with the expectation he was going to give you about half a season of value. Was that enough if you were able to draft him at the end of the fourth round or maybe even into the fifth round in some places? In my estimation, I think the answer is yes. I know that his totals rank was 158. Like, the numbers are never going to tell the story on Kawhi Leonard, but you were getting first round value down the stretch from a guy that was what you were hoping for. You're like, look, I'm going to take this guy around pick 55. I'm going to sit on him for as long as it takes because once he's playing, he's going to be a first rounder. And he ended up as a second rounder because of the ramp up, but down the stretch, he was a first rounder. And I'm just going to get what I can get. Because you get a handful of games out of a first rounder. It almost doesn't matter where you take him in the draft as long as it's not first 3 rounds. It's a boon. These are the guys that really move the ball forward. So I actually think Kawhi Leonard ended up as a decent Roto play. And amazingly, he ended up as a decent head-to-head play because he was healthy for the head-to-head playoffs. I still wouldn't have taken him hurt to start the year in head-to-head because I cannot advocate a situation where you have to sit on a guy for a month, 2 months, whatever. It's going to sink your team even if he's amazing down the stretch because you can't take that many L's in head-to-head leagues at the beginning of a year. Roto, like, you sit on him, big deal. You pick up someone else. You pick up Norm Powell. Let's see, you took Kawhi in the 5th round. You can take Norm in the 10th. You get top 50 value out of Norman Powell for the 2.5 months that Kawhi was out, and then you just sort of replace one with the other. So there was a handcuff there on the Roto side that with head-to-head, you didn't like head-to-head. You want guys that are going to give you stuff. I guess that same process could have worked for head-to-head, but you still would have been sitting on an IL guy when at some point during pretty much every season, you're going to have 4 guys hurt at the same time or more, and you're going to be taking zeros in head-to-head because of it. So starting your year by sacrificing one of those IL spots is just, it's disastrous. It's so bad. All right, moving along to number 2 on the list, the second riskiest player on the planet going into this season, LaMelo Ball at number 19. We've talked about this one a bunch. He actually moved up to 17, then he moved up to 15 before the season started, so it even got riskier. He opened, I don't know how many of us remember this. I barely remembered it. He opened at 29. That was tempting, I'll say, at 29. For all the reasons we've talked about on innumerable shows over the last couple of weeks, really. And over again, I said, no, like, I know that they're saying the right, he's got ankle inserts and blah, blah, blah. He's going to do the thing that Steph did. And everything was gold. Everything was delightful. But here we are. My take with LaMelo Ball at 19 before the season started was head-to-head, rarely, and roto, nope. And the reason I felt that way was because, well, the injury risk was thing number 1. Things numbers 2 through whatever, like, he's a punt play. He likely maxes out in value somewhere in the second round if you're not punting anything. And that's in a perfect scenario. That's where the steals are high, the assists are high, the free throws are high, the threes are high, and like all the things that you want from him, they're all there. Last season, for instance, he averaged 24 points a game, 8 assists, 1.8 steals, and he shot 87% at the foul line on about a little less than 5 per game. He was at 3.2 3-pointers, 43% from the field. Maybe I should have been aware, or maybe I should have been even more. I was quite aware because, again, he was a no. I said no over and over and over again. I said, no, I do not want LaMelo Ball in the second round. I am not spending a first or second round pick on this dude until he proves to me that he can make it through a season unscathed. His only time, he's 1 out of 5 years now in the NBA that he's actually been somewhat healthy. 1 out of 5. He missed 21 games, 7 games, 46 games, 60 games, and 35 games. Dude just isn't playing basketball, and his team keeps losing and losing and losing, and the tank is on, man. How long can Charlotte be this bad? LaMelo Ball was their top pick back in 2020. 2020, guys. The tank is going for a half decade strong. This is awful. It's awful basketball. It's awful to deal with over and over and over and over again. And I said, nothing drives me crazier. And you guys already know who the riskiest player is. You know who's number 1 on this list. This one, LaMelo Ball, ending up on multiple fantasy teams of mine, is the thing I'm actually the most irritated about. Yeah, I took Joel Embiid in one league. It was the Let's Shoot the Moon League, and he's going to be number 1. We'll get there in just a second. But LaMelo Ball, and when I took Embiid, I was like, look, I'm going to do this in a one-off. I'm doing it for one league. If it hits, great. I can throw this league into cruise control, and I'm going to win it. If it doesn't, whatever. I'm in 9 other Yahoo Cash leagues. I'll be fine. With LaMelo Ball, it wasn't that way. It wasn't like, oh, well, this is a one-off. I'll try LaMelo in this one, and if it pans out, great. Because even when you're comparing these 2 risky players, Joel Embiid, the upshot with Embiid was, what if he does what he had done in the past? What if he's not healthy, but healthy-ish? He can be the number 1 player in all of fantasy basketball. I don't think anybody looks at LaMelo Ball and they're like, yeah, this guy's going to be number 1. The best case scenario for Ball, if you're not punting anything, just straight 9-cat rankings, is probably around 15. Best case. So with one of those guys, you're getting a dude that completely changes your team. With the other one, you'd be getting a good player, a very good player, but not one that would just sort of coast you to the finish line. Because the whole point of taking the Joel Embiid risk was, oh, well, I'm going to take a guy at the end of the first, beginning of the second round that is going to put me on par with the teams that ended up with Wemby and Jokic and then ultimately Shea. Because you have to try to find a way to make up ground against those teams. We've talked about it before. The easiest way to make up ground against the teams that have draft picks at the top is to just get the next few right. Get your second rounder right, get your third rounder right, get your fourth, get your fifth. Don't do anything crazy, and you can sort of chunk away at catching up, at turning your end of first round Jason Tatum, not anymore, into Nikola Jokic in overall value. But it's going to take multiple rounds. The Joel Embiid path was, well, maybe I can knock this out in one pick. And if it works, great. It's like getting a top pick. And if it doesn't, wipe my hands of it. I move on to one of my other leagues. LaMelo Ball doesn't have that strength. If you were drafting him in the second round, you were hoping he was a second rounder. Or if you're in head-to-head, you were like, all right, well, I'm going to lean into the bad field goal percent. I'm going to lean into the turnovers. Great. You build that way. He has first-round potential. Last year, when he had his better statistical season, even though he only played in 22 games, he was number 7 if you were punting turnovers and field goal percent. It's a lot to ask. This year, if you were punting both, he was number 14, which doesn't sound like it's that much farther back, but it is. It's a decent amount farther back. And I really hate, you guys know how much I hate going into a draft with the intention of punting 2 things. Pick one. I'm like Tamatoa right now. I can't focus when you're looking at both eyes. Pick one. Or pick none. And don't lock yourself into a build after your second round pick. So LaMelo Ball, that one frustrates the hell out of me looking back. I had it in all my boards. All of my boards were just like, don't do it, Dan. And then I did it anyway. It's so stupid of me. I'm not saying anybody that drafted LaMelo Ball is an idiot. I'm saying I'm an idiot because I looked right at him and I built all these buckets out and I said to myself, I don't want him. Specifically on my roto teams, because like the 9-cat thing is harder to do. At least with head-to-head, you can really go into it punting something. So like I had him around an early second round pick if you were punting turnovers. And I guess it turns out field goal percent as well. But if you weren't, he should have been multiple buckets farther down the board. Okay. So there was one league where he fell to the third round. Am I as mad at myself about that one? Not as mad, but still a little bit. Because the more we break down what went right and what went wrong this past season, and a lot went right. This was, by all accounts, and financially it tells the story. I won the most money I've ever won this season, which usually means I probably got the most picks right this season compared to the previous 6 or 7 or however long I've been doing this thing on this side of the wall. But like, LaMelo. The thing that is driving me the most crazy, not just LaMelo, is really this concept of if you just don't muck it up for 3 rounds, you can be in pretty good shape. And I know it's not that simple to just say, oh, well, this is a guy who's going to be safe and healthy at the beginning, but that should really be our goal. And it does take some guys off the board. And the last player on the list is, of course, Joel Embiid, who head-to-head was a miss. I wrote near miss. Yeah, you don't want him in head-to-head. With Roto, I said with fear, yes. And that was really like, don't do it in a bunch of different places. You could try it one kind of this. So that's the fear. And it didn't pan out. Obviously, this one was, it should have been a miss on both. But certainly you weren't going to take a guy who you expected to miss 20 ball games or more on the head-to-head side. That's just asking too much, especially with a late first-round pick. With Roto, it's that same thing of like, okay, what do we do to catch up to the team that took Nikola Jokic? You can either, I mean, you can go back to the pre-rank board and just like try to find the names that fit. You can either go Joel Embiid and hope it works, and if it doesn't, your season ends before it starts. Or you go back and you find the guy who you feel is a safe pick. You go, James Harden at the end of the first round. You go Ant or Sabonis, or I guess it turned out to be Cat, although I think we all thought there was a little bit of an injury risk there. Steph is a little older. It was probably more of those first couple names in the second round. In the third, again, you're looking for safe. I think Jalen Williams would have fallen into that category. De'Aaron Fox probably falls into that category, although then, again, weird things happen. So, like, you can't always know for sure. Bam Adebayo would have been a very goofy early third-round pick, but you could call him a fourth. Jaren Jackson, pretty safe third-round pick. Desmond Bane, pretty safe fourth-round pick. These are the things you can do. And what if I told you you got to start your team with Harden, Sabonis, Jalen Williams, and Desmond Bane? You'd be like, you wouldn't be all that excited about that team. But you know what that team would have done for you? That team would have made you competitive. Because those guys all ended up near the top of the totals board. Harden was a first rounder by totals. Jalen Williams was, I think, a second rounder by totals. Domantas Sabonis was a second rounder by totals. Desmond Bane was, I forget. He was pretty good. I think it was a second or third rounder by totals. Not exciting, but your boat doesn't sink. Stay afloat, boat. That's where we're going next season. Expect a very boring we're going to do a lot of shows like this one where we're going to talk about risky guys. Who can you take the risk on? And certainly in a games cap roto where the cap is 82, you have a little more wiggle room. But man, I'll tell you what, if you want the middle of your season to feel important, play it safe. Those are the riskiest players we talked about in all of fantasy basketball leading up to this season, and that is our show for today. I am Dan Vespers for the Old Man Squad. Please like, rate, subscribe on your way out. I am very happy that the YouTube page is staying put. The subscribers haven't dropped off, and a lot of that is thanks to you guys, the new viewers. A lot of it is thanks to the amazing work of Noah Rubin with his brand new Dynasty show. Shout out to his frequent guest, good buddy Matt Lawson, who has really been kind of driving the Dynasty crowd to find that new show from Noah. It's incredible teamwork, and I'm just happy that it's part of the Old Man Squad network. I'm blown away. And shout out to Eric Ong. If you missed that show from yesterday with Eric, that one's blowing up as well. It's Eric's new top 10. It's a fun one. We're trying to keep it fun. Trying to keep it light, kind of keep it fun here over on Old Man Squad. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Last show of the week. We'll wrap it up. I think it might be coming late in the day with Adam King. Don't quote me on that yet. See you later.